and this is the Billie Jean King video. This is Billie Jean King. She's a tennis player, running around in the 50s, 60s, and 70s is when she's most big, and she became an ideal of women's liberation in a much more broad sense than Babe Didrikson did before her, because her goals were a little bit more ambitious in what she wanted to do. Like Babe Didrikson, primarily what she did was be really good at sports and beat men at their own game was the big thing. She was in the Battle of the Sexes with Bobby Riggs and won, and that meant a lot. But at the same time, like Babe Didrikson, she was pitted against gender roles, and traditional feminine gender roles in particular, and not wanting to conform to them in her career. They were different from Babe Didrikson's gender roles that she was defying. Not completely, like, they're still the same core of there are certain things that women ought to do and sports aren't them. But there was a little bit more leniency. Women did play more sports while Babe Didrikson was doing her thing. They meant something different. Page 280 states, while boys were learning through team sports to network and cooperate as preparation for the business world, girls were isolated, directed into non-competitive sports that prepared them to be healthy housewives alone all day until the kids came home from school. So at that point in time, sports were kind of a charming hobby that girls did until they got married, and then they dropped it. You couldn't really be a professional athlete. It certainly wasn't expected of Billie Jean King. But Billie Jean King said, yes, I can. And she did. She became the world's top female tennis player for a very long time. She had her Battle of the Sexes with Bobby Riggs. She won. And she was a lot more intentional about how she used her fame. I think mostly just because she could be. That feminism was a much more developed idea at this point in time. And she stated, and this is just a quote from one of her interviews, but there are a lot of quotes from her like this, when she said, "To me, women's liberation means that every woman ought to be able to pursue whatever career or personal lifestyle she chooses as a full and equal member of society without fear of sexual discrimination." That's a pretty basic and simple statement, but golly, it sure is difficult to get people to accept it. So she said these things in interviews and made it part of her identity, she was intentional about making herself a symbol of women's liberation. And it stuck a little bit more heavily in her career than it did with Babe Didrikson's. So her victories and losses meant more politically. It meant more. Here it is. She was really involved in promoting Title IX, this concept of equality in women in education. Title IX states that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in or denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, which still matters today, as I'm speaking as a woman about to be a female college student, that Title IX is still something I know about that matters. So Billie Jean King played a role in shaping the political future of women, and she was able to, not necessarily because she was a good tennis player, but because, as a good tennis player, she became the symbol of women's liberation, and fought gender roles and won with her tennis racket of fury.